Read 311.3. In Goal 2, we discussed how we can commit Biden and the Democratic establishment to a broad and more progressive social justice platform. In this last video, we discuss why we must seize this moment to press for justice across the board, not just in policing and criminal justice. Hey, I hope you can agree with me that a broad social justice agenda is now more clearly needed and more viable. This is why we need it. Even conservative voices, such as David Brooks, are acknowledging a nexus of institutionalized racism and an unprecedented concentration of economic and political power. This interaction has allowed ongoing police brutality, and now a pandemic, to disproportionately ravage our African American communities. Yet, we all know that not only countless tragedies like George Floyd's, not only the lopsided economic and public health impact of COVID, but also the very rise of Trump and his savaging of minority rights and of the social safety nets, these are all symptoms of our 4-decade slide toward a virtual oligarchy. This system is stifling all the communities with least privilege in our nation. African American, Native American to a devastating degree, US-born Latinx, and immigrants from Latin America and other non-European regions, especially those who are undocumented. We can all see now that the result is asphyxiating injustice in every sphere of life: legal, economic, healthcare, educational, environmental, etc. For too many of us, but clearly for some more than others, these injustices make it ever harder to breathe in ways that are barely metaphorical, as with economic stress, and often literal, as with COVID, our air and water, and of course, police brutality. I hope we can also agree that among the casualties of this corrupt system of entrenched privilege, we can even count our white working class communities and white rural communities, where so many have been cruelly deceived by a corporate hijacked and ever more plutocratic Republican Party that has distorted its once legitimate core principle of the importance of self-determination into a grotesque vilification of government and of minorities, ultimately devolving into the party that either fanatically reveres or conveniently tolerates a demagogue like Trump. We all have a stake in defining this moment, for ourselves and for each other. When you see a man choked, you gasp for a reason. Accordingly, I further assume that even those among us who supported Biden during the primaries over, say, Warren or Sanders, either out of genuine moderate convictions or out of electability concerns, can now see the need for a more progressive candidate and agenda, and can also see the popular groundswell that would have made such a candidate absolutely electable. Now, I respect Joe Biden, and he will almost certainly be our candidate, but I believe that we can still define which Biden is our candidate. Moderate establishment Biden, or a much more progressive Biden? Fearing a second Trump term, some of us have, not unreasonably, shied away from candidates with agendas along the lines of a Green New Deal, a more progressive plan to roll back the institutional racism that oppresses people of color and the neoconservative rich-get-richer political system that oppresses all low-income folks, including white laborers and small farmers, and even endangers our middle class. I myself harbored some concerns that Bernie, merely because of his socialist Democrat label, might not be electable in a country that never got over the Cold War, but no longer. Sanders or Warren and their economic and healthcare agendas would now be more obvious choices for many of us, if not most, in this time of tyranny and public health catastrophe. On this, I'm with Charlemagne the God, on whose show Joe recently gaffed so embarrassingly. Charlemagne did not dwell on the gaffe. His plea is for getting Biden's commitment to broad social justice. We need to corner Joe for a complete platform. We cannot settle for less than justice and significant reparation across the board, from law enforcement to economic justice in every aspect of life. Convicting 4 officers is not enough, nor is reform of policing and the criminal justice system enough. We have all seen that the majority of officers are dedicated public servants, even first responder heroes throughout the pandemic, and so many locking arms with us in protest. But the so-called bad apples are not so few, and that's because the soil is impoverished. The soil where all officers must grow, all teachers, all public servants, including politicians, indeed all of us, including our children. The cracks in that baked soil are the cracks in our democracy. Let us enrich our nation's soil. Let us end this choking drought, and let us make of our democracy a greener tree. Green not just from hope, but from thriving. Oxygen comes from trees, guys. Let us all, each and every one of us, finally breathe free on 11/3.